Welcome to Voices of Experience. The next half hour, we'll examine the role of funding of the justice system in Minnesota. What does it mean for all Minnesotans? Why does justice delayed mean justice denied? Why is justice in jeopardy in the state of Minnesota? I am Dan Mikel, President Emeritus of the Minnesota State Retiree Council, AFL-CIO. In previous programs, we have featured Minnesota Associate Justice Paul H. Anderson, and we've also had retired Justice Eric Magnuson. Today, our very special guest is the current Chief Justice of the Minnesota Supreme Court, Lorie Gildea. Chief Justice Gildea, welcome to Voices of Experience.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. As we all learned in school at one time or another, there are three co-equal branches of government: legislative, executive, and judicial. And this is true on both the federal level and the state level. On the state level, what percent approximately of the state's budget is allocated to the co-equal judicial branch of government?
The judiciary's budget is about 1.8% of the state general fund. So we spend every year in the judiciary about $272 million, which accounts for about 1.8% of the state's general fund.
So one of the three co-equal branches is less than 2% of the state budget.
That's right.
Okay. So how have cuts in funding affected the court system in the state of Minnesota, the entire judicial system? You know, is our justice system at the breaking point?
Yes, we are very much at the breaking point. In the judiciary, we have been described as having the largest front door in Minnesota. We take all comers. That's our constitutional obligation. The court system exists for all 5 million Minnesotans. Every single Minnesotan is one of our constituents. And we depend on the other two branches, the executive and the legislature, to fund us adequately. Even though we bring in $200 million in revenue for state and local governments every year, we don't get to keep any of that money. It goes right into the state general fund. And then we depend on the legislature and the governor to give us the money we need so that we can carry out our constitutional obligations. And unfortunately, the funding decisions, the choices that the other branches have made have not been adequate over the past several years. Just speaking just for the last 2 years, last year we took a $10 million base cut, and the year before that, approximately $5 million. So the upshot is, as a result of the funding choices made by the other branches of government, we in the judiciary have been running our operation about 10% short of the people that we need to do the work. And these are staff people. So we're down about 250 people that we need, staff people that we need to do the work, and our research shows us that we need 20 more judges to do the work. So the funding decisions really have left us in the judiciary at the breaking point.
So this $15 million cut over a period of years, this is at the same time that the general population is going up.
Yes.
And so that presents even more challenges.
It does, and you know, we recognize in the judiciary that we need to be good stewards of the public money, and we have been embarking on a multi-year process of redesigning how we do what we do so that we can be more efficient, using technology, for example, to deliver services in a way that's more cost-effective and more efficient. But as you know, justice is very much a human endeavor, yes. And we need the people, and we need the judges, and the judges need to have time so that they can resolve cases for people in a fair way. People come into court with their most important matters.
Yes.
I mean, the court system exists for the child who's abused in her home and she needs protection. The court system exists for the family who has to go through a divorce. The court system exists for the tenant who needs her security deposit back from a landlord, or a small business owner whose contract isn't being enforced. And of course also for the state, who is seeking to put somebody in prison who has committed a crime and somebody who we are justifiably afraid of. The court system exists for every single Minnesotan.
Okay. I do want to ask you one question about your particular job
Yes.
as Chief Justice of the Minnesota Supreme Court. In addition to the duty of serving on the bench, what are the other duties that you have as the Chief Justice?
I participate in all of the 700 or so cases that the Minnesota Supreme Court, that come before the Minnesota Supreme Court every year. I preside at our court sessions, which means I call them to order. I tell people when their time is expired, and I draw things to a close. But I'm also the administrative head of the judicial branch of government. So I chair our policy-making body, which is called the Judicial Council. And I'm also very actively involved right now, as you know, in lobbying for funding for the justice system on behalf of the justice system. So I've been spending a lot of time over at the legislature and speaking to groups, really trying to make sure that Minnesotans are aware of the grave funding problem facing the court system right now.
Okay. Now we'll talk about rights that people accused of a crime have in a little while. Let's go back to a subject that you raised. People who work every day and or want to work every day, and they are touched by the court system. I want to go through just a few examples, and you can answer quickly on these. First of all, I want to say I'm the proud grandparent of an adopted child. And Grandma and Grandpa and Aunt were very happy to appear in court with our daughter to finalize the adoption of our grandson. How crowded are judicial calendars?
Very crowded. I mean, as I indicated, our research shows that we need 20 more judges around the state in order to do the work that we have. So our calendars are very, very crowded, and our judges are very strapped for time.
Yes. And moving from the beginning of the life cycle to the end of the life cycle with death, does the lack of court support staff and as well as the judges, does that mean that there's not a timely resolution to the estate of a deceased person?
That absolutely can happen. In fact, I was in a meeting just the other day where I heard a story about somebody who was trying to probate a relative's estate, and the person passed away in November, and they weren't able to get a hearing for several months into the future, 4 or 5 months into the future. Meanwhile, the assets are sitting there, and they can't get the thing through probate because of the funding problem facing the courts.
And a house may have to be disposed of.
That's exactly right.
And stocks or
That's exactly right.
savings of one type or another. Yeah.
Yes.
You mentioned the subject of divorce. Once that's not all that uncommon anymore. Once a person has agonized over this major life decision and files for divorce, there may be considerable delay before a case is heard, and lives are put on hold. Are matters of family law facing the same delays due to lack of funding as other areas of the law?
Yes. Yes. It's a systemic statewide concern. Every case type is impacted.
Every single case, and you mentioned contracts. And,
Yes.
If a person who is involved in an auto accident.
That's exactly right. And I heard a story about that kind of situation just a few weeks ago, where the case was so when you file a case, you go through a process of discovery where
Yes.
each side finds out information about the other, and then once that process is over, then there may be an opportunity to get the case disposed of or some of the issues taken away, and then you have a trial. And this lawyer was telling me, for heaven's sakes, we've got discovery done in July. The case is ready to go to trial, but we can't get a trial until next July. So meanwhile, the alleged victim is sitting there, and as you said, everybody has to put their life on hold.
Yeah. And the witness may not.
That's exactly right. Memories
may not
fade.
Be there, may have moved.
Memories fade, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Would this ever happen in the state of Minnesota? I'll give you a scenario. A person takes a day off work to go to a local court to dispute a traffic ticket, or to handle some other matter, and arrives there in the morning, 9 o'clock, and then boom, the court closes at noon one day a week. What is a person to do?
It's a very unfortunate situation that we've come to. We have our courts are organized into judicial districts, 10 of them around the state, geographically based. And in 6 out of 10 of our judicial districts now, we're closing public service windows, the place where the public comes, like in your hypothetical, to transact business, a half a day, a week, because of the budget problems.
Yeah. So the person is just plain out of
Well,
luck.
they have to come back.
And they have to come back and take
Exactly.
take another day off, perhaps make other arrangements for daycare or whatever.
It's incredibly difficult for people's lives, and it's not what Minnesotans deserve.
Another situation, a person may need a protective court order from an abusive spouse, or an order to protect a child from an abusive person. Is it reasonable to expect a rapid resolution to such a potentially life-threatening circumstance?
Well, it's not only reasonable to expect it, the Constitution demands it. I mean, the Constitution gives every Minnesotan the right to justice promptly and without delay. That's what our Constitution says, promptly and without delay. But, you know, as I said, we're down 250 people and 20 judges.
So lives may literally be at stake.
Yes.
You know, that's a type of thing that would wake a person up in the middle of the night.
That's exactly right. Yeah. I mean, we really do lay awake at night worrying about our ability to take care of the most vulnerable in our society.
Another all too typical situation may involve child support payments. If a custodial spouse has not received child support statements, I read in a recent article in the Star Tribune that court orders in Ramsey County, St. Paul and suburbs, being delayed at one point last year for 90 days, another 3 months, rather than half of that time. That's one of the problems that has to be fixed. So with the being down 20 judges potentially and 250 court workers, what is the price tag that the court system needs in order to provide the services that are constitutionally mandated?
Well, as I said, we spend about $272 million a year. And our budget request this session, we recognize the historic nature of the financial challenge facing our state right now. And so in our budget request, what we're asking for this session is to be held harmless. We're saying to the legislature, look, we're right here right now. The water level in the judicial branch is right here. And if we tread water really, really hard, we can stick our nose up above the water line just enough so that we don't drown. But if you take any more from us, we're going to fall below the water line. So hold us harmless. That's what we're saying to the legislature and the governor in this session, given the magnitude of the financial challenge facing our state. We're not asking for new money to hire new judges right now. We're just saying, don't cut us anymore. And that would be about $272 million every year.
So the problem did not come about